The chime of the bell beckons us into a sacred time. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, where we widen love's circle by honoring the inherent worth and dignity of all. We extend a heartfelt and inclusive invitation to join us in meaningful worship and in service to the world. We greet all those who join us this morning, all of you here in the sanctuary, all of our many online viewers, así como el creciente número de participantes bilingües que nos acompañan desde sus hogares. I invite you to pause to greet one another after the service and then head over to Channing Hall for coffee and more conversation. Please seek out someone that you have not yet met and say hello to them and make a new friend. Now I invite you to join Dr. Rock and the Sanctuary Choir for our first hymn.
Good morning. I invite you to open your teal hymnals to number 1023, Building Bridges. We're going to sing this all together one time, and then the choir will sing, they'll begin, and then I'm going to bring you in and I'll sing with you. And so we're going to do it in a canon. Please rise in body or spirit. Building bridges between our divisions, I read
building bridges between our divisions. The words of our opening hymn offer something of a vision for our world: to bridge the divides, to find unity in diversity, to honor the complexity of life and culture. From these things come peace. For these things, we, this community of potentiality and possibility, have gathered to lift up, to celebrate the beauty that remains unique within each and yet unites all. So come, friends, let us worship together.
Celebremos compartiendo nuestras vidas, encendiendo esta luz. And now I invite you to sing and hand sign the congregational covenant together with the choir.
Hello, I'm John Naylor. I came to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston looking for community and found a terrific group of people and became a member in spring 2009. I quickly became involved with the services auction fundraising team, participated with many of the social justice community projects, volunteered and have been working with RE kids for many years now, including the OWL program, which is terrific. And for a while I worked in the church office, retiring from the church office in 2020 when the pandemic kind of got underway. And there are just so many wonderful things about the church. Some of the less sexy things that we need to do with the capital campaign is the phone system that we use is over 15 years old. Have you tried using an iPhone 1 lately? Also, many of the staff are using computers that are more than 10 years old. So those aren't very glamorous items, but we certainly need to update the phone system, the computers. Exciting to see that the solar panels were in the parking lot yesterday. They're on the roof today, so the solar panels are being installed and we'll soon have electrical power self-sufficiency. So it's just really exciting things that are happening at the church, and we need to pay for lots of things. The capital campaign will help that. So I encourage you to please help support the capital campaign. Doesn't matter what amount, anything that you're able to do will be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
And that was a great testimonial about the importance of our capital campaign. And there's still plenty of time to participate. So I hope you'll join me and the 38 other households that have pledged the campaign. So far, we've raised over $1.2 million in pledges, which puts us over halfway to our goal of $2.4 million.
Struggle with insecurities, securities, and even self-esteem. You never felt good enough. You never felt pretty enough. But imagine God whispering in your ear, letting you know that everything that had happened is now gone, gone. It's gone, all gone. Every doubt, every mistake, every failure is gone. depression, gone. By faith, it's just gone. Low self-esteem, it's gone. All gone. Hiding who I am, it's all gone. All my scars, all my pain, it's in the past like yesterday. It's all gone. Questioning who I am, gone. What my mother did, what my father did, what my so-called friends said. Heartbreak, it's gone. And I am so glad, and I never want to be there again.
You don't have to be so hesitant. You can show them appreciation. They're fabulous. They're fabulous. They are much in demand these days, so they are going to head out here in a minute because they have another gig tonight, right? I invite you to come back at 5 and hear some more really fabulous music by not just the Sanctuary Choir, but Chelsea and Symphony and Dr. Rock. I'm very excited. I heard a little bit of it earlier, and it was quite wonderful when they were practicing. But also, now is the time when we tell the kids that they're going to go do some really cool stuff. Carol has assembled this really good team of people who work with them and come up with really nice stuff for them to work on. And we want you to know as you're going out to not forget that you are much loved and you're an important part of this church. And all the adults are going to sing as you go, as you head out. This is the time during the service when we pause for contemplation. It's the time when we set aside rushing and distractions, the scurrying and the disruptions. And so, with intention and care, we carve out this time to enter into a time of stillness, a time of calm that may bring us peace and understanding. This is a time that some call meditation and others name prayer. Settle your body into a comfortable place. Breathe with me as we gather to do the holy work of kinship and support. Open your mind, open your heart. God of many names and mystery beyond all our naming. The poet tells us the border is a line that birds cannot see. Yet somehow we find ourselves incising that line into the earth with walls and guardhouses and floating it upon the river with razor wire. May we be forgiven for making real these unseen lines in order to divide us from and harm others. We build a wall upon the false binary of genders, despite our minds and hearts not finding it necessary. We build a wall between ethnicities and races, despite our eyes and hearts not finding it necessary. We build a wall between languages, despite our ears and hearts not finding it necessary. Teach us to respond with our hearts, to respond with that force that birds cannot see, our ears cannot hear, and our skin cannot touch. Teach us to respond with a force that will unite instead of divide and heal instead of harm. Teach us to approach these borders not to build walls, not with suspicion and fear, but to build bridges with acceptance and love. We pray in the names of all those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. We pray in the names of all helpers of humankind. Amen. We pause now together to lift up that which sits heavy and light on our hearts. Freddie Jones, mother of Tawana Grice, underwent successful surgery on Tuesday and is now recuperating. Sarah Lucky, mother of members Heather Farina and David Wordlow, passed away on Tuesday. We hold them and their families in our hearts as they grieve. We continue to pray for the people of Israel and Palestine and pray for their safety, for peace, and for justice. We now turn to a practice inspired by African, indigenous, and pagan traditions. We say aloud or bring to mind those who we wish to be held by the loving embrace of this religious community. They are part of the great cloud of witness and memory, and we will, even if we do not know their names, hold them in our hearts. In this great cloud of witness and memory, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. Let us remember the suffering and joy amid and among our community that we do not know. Each week at this juncture, we enter into a time of silence, a time when we pause in awe and wonder of the beauty, diversity, and mystery that is life. In the spirit of love, in the spirit of hope, and in the spirit of compassion, I now invite each of you to enter into a time of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection.
Each week, our morning offering is shared with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values and through which we may live out our principles in the world. This week, that organization is Waikuta USA, a non-governmental, nonprofit organization representing the interests of the Mimbum people of Cameroon in West Central Africa. Today we have with us the founders of the Mimbum Cultural and Development Association, which spearheaded an effort 2 years ago to build a surgical center in Nudu, Cameroon. Dr. Elias Bongba is professor of religion at Rice University, where he teaches about the religions of Africa. He is the recipient of many distinguished awards and has won international recognition for his work on HIV/AIDS in Africa. Dr. Odilia Nagalu Bongba is a clinical reacher with Novartis Pharmaceuticals. She is an agronomist by training and has a master's degree in forestry management and a PhD in pharmacology with a specialization in neuroscience. Cameroon's civil war blocked access to the major regional hospitals, denying critical health care to many. The successful effort to build the surgical center has saved well over 1,000 lives. Dr. Elias Bongba will now tell us more about the project to build a child and maternal wing of the hospital.
Thank you very much, Dr. Strassman. We are delighted and honored to be here with you at this service. The Civil War further compromised the health challenges that include malaria, HIV/AIDS, and many other tropical diseases. The hospital joins other hospitals in its system that is open to all persons without discrimination and willing to continue to serve and work so that these illnesses do not compromise public health. And the hospital will emphasize treatment, prevention, champion child and maternal welfare. In order to do these things, the hospital needs the infrastructure necessary to treat patients and also practice preventive medicine. We are very grateful to all of you for the opportunity to visit with you. Thank you.
Those in our sanctuary will find the instructions for text giving in the order of service next to the name of the shared offering recipient. And those watching the live stream will see the instructions on your screen. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love and action. We ask you to give generously. An offering will now be gratefully received.
please join with me in the words to dedicate our offering found in your order of service. To the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings.
The first reading is To Live in the Borderlands Means You by Gloria Azaldúa. Are neither hispana, india, negra, española, ni gabacha, eres mestiza, mulata, half-breed, caught in the crossfire between camps while carrying all 5 races on your back, not knowing which side to turn to, run from. To live in the borderlands means knowing that the India in you, betrayed for 500 years, is no longer speaking to you, that Mexicanas call you rajetas, that denying the Anglo inside you is as bad as having denied the Indian or black. Cuando vives en la frontera, people walk through you. The wind steals your voice. You're a burra, buey, scapegoat, forerunner of a new race, half and half, both woman and man, neither, a new gender. To live in the borderlands means to put chile in the borsach, eat whole wheat tortillas, speak Tex-Mex with a Brooklyn accent, be stopped by La Migra at the border checkpoints. Living in the borderlands means you fight hard to resist the gold elixir beckoning from the bottle, the pull of the gun barrel, the rope crushing the hollow of your throat. In the borderlands, you are the battleground, where enemies are kin to each other. You are at home, a stranger. The border disputes have been settled. The volley of shots have shattered the truce. You are wounded, lost in action, dead, fighting back. To live in the borderlands means the mill with the razor-white teeth wants to shred off your olive red skin, crush out the kernel, your heart. Pound pinch you, roll you out, smelling like white bread, but dead. To survive the borderlands, you must live sin fronteras, be at crossroads. Here ends the first reading.
The second reading is from Borderlands, La Frontera, The New Mestiza by Gloria Azaldúa. The struggle is inner, Chicano, Indio, American Indian, Mojado, Mexicano, immigrant, Latino, Anglo in power, working class, Anglo, Black, Asian. Our psyches resemble the border towns and are populated by the same people. The struggle has always been inner and is played out in the outer terrains. Awareness of our solution must come before inner changes, which in turn come before changes in society. Nothing happens in the real world unless it first happens in the images in our head.
And now I invite you to open your teal hymnals to number 1026. If every woman in the world, please rise in body or in spirit and join together as we sing 1026.
I press my hand to the steel curtain. Chain link fence crowned with rolled barbed wire, rippling from the sea where Tijuana touches San Diego, unrolling over mountains and plains and deserts, this tortilla curtain, turning into El Rio Grande, flowing down the flatlands of the Magic Valley of South Texas, its mouth emptying into the Gulf. 1,950-mile-long open wound, dividing a pueblo, a culture, running down the length of my body, staking fence rods into my flesh, splits me, mi raja. This is my home, this thin edge of barbed wire. But the skin of the earth is seamless. The sea cannot be fenced. El Mar does not stop at borders. To show the white man what she thought of his arrogance, Yamiya blew the wire fence down. This week we continue our series, Lives of the Spirit, on some of the great spiritual activists of the 20th century with the words and work of the Chicana poet, queer theorist, Gloria Anzaldúa. It was she who felt the Texas border as an open wound running the length of my body. And it was she who sought to take the experience of living at, growing in, being on a border culture where the lifeblood of two worlds merged to form a third, to develop a new kind of spirituality. This she called a new mestiza consciousness, a consciousness of the borderlands. Because I, mestiza, continually walk out of one culture and into another, because I am in all cultures at the same time. Alma entre dos mundos, tres, cuatro. Mi zumba la cabeza con lo contradictorio, ignorida por todas las voces que me hablan simultáneamente. My soul caught between 2, 3, 4 worlds. My head buzzes with the contradiction. I am buzzing with all the voices that talk with me simultaneously. That's the Spanish for you. The word mestiza means to mix. Historically, it's a term that referred to the children of people whose parents had come from two different cultures. One, European Spanish, the other, indigenous. For Anzaldúa, the word meant that, yes, but also symbolized the way that wisdom that could come from straddling two or more cultures and learning from them to change the way we perceive reality, to create a new consciousness. For her, this meant mixing cultures, traditions, customs, religions, words from the Chicano, Indio, American Indian, Mojado, Mexicano, immigrant Latino, Anglo in power, working class Anglo, Black, Asian. What might it mean for you? What identities do you carry? It is a central claim of our sermon series that a mystic is someone who finds something of the universal, the infinite, within the particular. Put another way, Anzaldúa understood a truth about what it means to be human in an age of dislocation and disruption. It is always to be living on the borders between one identity and another, between one country and another. When asked to describe herself, she would name herself a third world lesbian feminist with Marxist and mystic leanings. The borders between one identity and another. For Anzaldúa, the borders were both metaphorical and material. The material, living in Texas, the material borders which Anzaldúa invoked, which she found inscribed into her very flesh, are familiar to many of us. She grew up in the Rio Grande Valley at a time when it was easy to cross from one country to the other. The blood of some 4 cultures flowed in her veins: African, indigenous, Espanol, Anglo. There was something of each within her. To show the white man what she thought of his arrogance, Yemiya blew that wire fence down. Yemiya is a divine being from the Yoruba peoples in present-day Nigeria. She made her way to the Western Hemisphere with the slave ships and serves as one of the Orishas, spirits of voodoo, Santeria, and many other African-inspired traditions that come from the encounter of the blood of one continent with the other. Patron Orisha of the waters, be they sweet streams and brooks or salt seas and oceans, she is slow to anger. Yet when roused, she can unleash her rage with all the turbulence of a flooding river. Yemiya blew that wire fence down. In this era, in this now, in this time in which we live, Anzaldúa seems to suggest all borders will ultimately crumble. Nothing can withstand the rage of the spirits. The dividing lines that exist between one culture and the next, between one nation and the next, will be erased, and something new will be born. The metaphorical, the borders which Anzaldúa named do not begin in the physical realm. They start within us. Once they take form inside our imaginations, we strive to give them material existence. Nothing happens in the real world unless it first happens in the images of our heads, she writes. To live in the borderlands means to put chili in the borscht, eat whole wheat tortillas, speak Tex-Mex with a Brooklyn accent. The universal within the particular. There are more migrants living in the world today than at any other time in human history. In 2022, the United Nations counted 281 million people who resided outside of their country of origin. That's almost 4% of the human population, 1 out of every 25 of us. Of the world's migrants, close to half are refugees, people who have departed their homelands for reasons that were other than voluntary. They fled violence, economic instability, or the climate crisis. Dislocation and disruption are defining characteristics of our age. We are all mixed up. Every city is home to not one culture or ethnicity, but many. Drive from one side of Houston to the other, and you will encounter signs in a dozen languages and invitations to sample cuisines in 100 different cultures. Walk into any room, and it is likely that many of the people you meet will be from somewhere other than here. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Massachusetts, New York, Michigan, Oklahoma. Members of our congregation come from all over our country. Brazil, Pakistan, Mexico, Cuba, Germany, China, India, Uruguay, members of our congregation come from all over the world. We are all mixed up. Between my household and my parents' household, I count connections to 4 different spiritual or religious traditions: Protestant Christianity, Judaism, Ifa, and Unitarian Universalism. What about you? What religious and cultural traditions make up your families, your groups of friends? It's hard these days to find people whose families are purely from one culture or another. The borderlands, the places where one culture rubs against the next, are seemingly everywhere. I was reminded of this last summer when I was in Oxford for a research seminar. There were about 20 of us. We scholars came from all over the United States, the United Kingdom, Indonesia, South Korea, South Africa, Romania. It was quite a mix. For reasons that were unclear, one of the largest contingents was a group of professors from universities affiliated with the Church of Latter-day Saints. These guys, and they were all men, were really devout and deeply immersed in Mormon culture. It would probably be fair to call them super Mormons. Now, I don't really say that to be facetious, but it's actually because I can't really think of any other way to describe them. They all trace their lineages back to the earliest generation of converts to the church. They all lived in Utah. They were all leaders in their congregations. And they had all chosen to teach at schools run by their faith community. They followed their religion's strictures. No tea at tea time, no sherry with the faculty. Thank you very much. Like I said, they were super Mormons. They were curious about Unitarian Universalism. And here I should probably mention that the seminar took place at Oxford's Harris Manchester College. Though it now has no denominational affiliation, it was founded more than 250 years ago as a seminary for training Unitarian ministers. And it has the strongest collection on global Unitarian and Universalist theology in the world, something which the head librarian always likes to point out to visiting scholars. Our Mormon friends found this somewhat confusing because they had never heard of Unitarian Universalism before. So naturally, they asked me to explain it. I spoke about Unitarian Universalism's non-creedal nature, openness to religious pluralism, and practice of covenant to unite a community of diverse beliefs. I told them how we've decided we need not think alike to love alike, as the phrase misattributed to the 17th century Unitarian theologian Francis David goes. And that as a religious community, we are more concerned with how we treat each other and the community around us than arguing about who has the correct belief system. And I got the response from them that I usually get from people who are believers in the one true God. Well, that doesn't sound like much of a religion at all, I was told. One of them, though, was a bit more introspective. Actually, he said, it sounds a bit like my family at Christmas. Not my brothers and my sisters or my parents or anything like that, but my children. They've all left the church, he sighed sadly, and married outside of it. When my whole family gets together, it's a bit like the United Nations. My wife and I have a Jewish son-in-law, a daughter who was raised Hindu, and an adult child who has rejected the church's teachings on gender and identifies as trans. Now, his comparison to Unitarian Universalism and his family at Christmas was not meant to be a compliment. Our friend was clearly quite distressed about the diversity of his familial life. But I thought it was quite wonderful, though I was wise enough not to point that out during our conversation. The thing that it reminded me of was how during our contemporary hour, it is difficult, if not impossible, to maintain cultural purity. I mean, here he was, this super Mormon, and his world was just all mixed up. Indeed, and I want to suggest, and we'll return to this in a bit, that many of the world's conflicts come from trying to maintain a sense of cultural purity at a time when tonight for dinner I can have Indian or Italian or Nigerian or Cajun or Japanese or really whatever sort of food I want. Whichever meal I decide upon, it is likely I will encounter someone from each of those cultures or other cultures when I go out to the grocery store. Is that not your experience? Aren't you constantly encountering people from cultures other than your own? Maybe you're in an interfaith or interracial relationship. Maybe your friends have a diversity of backgrounds. Maybe your coworkers come from a variety of countries. In these days, the borderlands are everywhere, the places where one culture crosses into another cannot be avoided. Life for most of us is a bit like Anzaldúa described. In the borderlands, you are the battleground, where your enemies are kin to each other. You are at home, a stranger. One of the strengths of the Unitarian Universalist tradition is that we lean into this mixing in the world rather than lean away from it. Our movement is what scholars of religion call a hybrid religion. And as I've shared with you in the past, Unitarian theology arose in the 16th and 17th century at the borderlands between Christian and Jewish communities, Christian and Muslim communities. Our religious ancestors believed that everyone was a child of God, regardless of religious persuasion, and that the path to peace was to recognize that we are each a child of the same God, all children of the same God. In celebrating this recognition, they drew not only from Christian sources, but from the sources and traditions of Judaism and Islam. They were, in some sense, practitioners of what Anzaldúa called spiritual mestizaje, drawing on her experience as a queer bilingual person of color. She understood herself as someone engaged in the transfer of ideas and information from one culture to another. She took her own mixed nature as a testimony that blending proves that all blood is intricately woven together and that all are spawned out of similar souls. We are spawned out of similar souls. It's worth saying something of Anzaldúa's biography. She was born in Harlingen, less than 20 miles from the United States and Mexico border and less than 30 miles from the ocean. Her family lived on those South Texas lands for 6 generations. She was part Mexican, part indigenous, part Anglo, and a bit African, a reflection of the mixing that takes place at the borderlands. Forerunner of a new race, half and half, both woman and man, neither, a new gender. She knew she was queer from the earliest of her days. As a child, a hormonal imbalance caused her to go through puberty when she was only 6 years old. And so she never felt fully comfortable in either a male or female gender. Reflecting on her earliest engagements with the eyes of others, she found herself labeled, in her words, queer, and retreated into books and solitude. That might be a familiar experience for some of us. She took it as an invitation or an imperative, I'm not quite sure which, to invent herself out of all of the mix of identities she lived with. Her text, being a tomboy and wearing boots, being unafraid of snakes and knives, showing my contempt for women's roles, leaving home to go to college, not settling down and getting married, being a politica, siding with the farm workers. She took the blend that she was and offered up her life as an attempt to create something new, something that would heal the wounds that emerged when borders, when cultures rubbed up against each other. We can no longer disown the white parts, the male parts, the pathological parts, the queer parts, the vulnerable parts. Embracing all of the elements of her identity was an opportunity, she believed, to reshape spiritual identity. Educated in a public school system where she was encouraged to leave behind her Spanish language, she went to college at the University of Texas Pan American, and then earned a master's degree from the University of Texas, Austin. From there, she moved to California, where she took up the life of a full-time writer, poet, essayist, manufacturer of literary fictions. She was most famous for her text, Borderlands, La Frontera, the New Mestiza. It is credited as a foundational work in queer and Chicana studies and disability studies and feminism. In it, she sought to create a new revolutionary spiritual freshness from the diversity that she was. Few books in the last decades have been as influential. Perhaps this was because for her, writing was a spiritual practice. She saw the role of the poet as similar to the role of the shaman, observing the role of the shaman is to preserve and create cultural identity by mediating the cultural heritage of the past and the present everyday situations. It was through metaphor, she thought, that we preserve ourselves. It was through metaphor, she argued, that we change ourselves. The resistance to change in a person is in direct proportion to the number of dead metaphors that person carries, she believed. She sought through her writing practice to create new metaphors, metaphors that would cast out false visions of purity, embrace blended diversity, and offer hope and healing. Here's a description of her writing as spiritual practice. I sit here before my computer, my altar on top of the monitor, with the virgin candle and copal incense burning. My companion, a wooden serpent staff with feathers, is to my right while I ponder the ways metaphor and symbol concretize the spirit and etherealize the flesh. The ways metaphor and symbol concretize the spirit and etherealize the body. An invitation to pay attention to these and then create new metaphors and symbols. It's one of the gifts this spiritual activist gives us. She invites us into a practice that emerges by embracing rather than rejecting the blending of cultures that occurs at the borderlands. Instead of seeking a purity that is impossible to find in a world that is all mixed up, she encourages us to live sin fronteras. What borderlands do you live at? What cultures or identities do you carry in your life? How might you live sin fronteras and embrace the distinctive elements of you in this life? Is there healing to be found for you by doing so? Certainly for Anzaldúa, there was an effort to create a new synthesis from opening herself to the knowledge the skin of the earth is seamless. The sea cannot be fenced. El Mar does not stop at the borders. It seems wise not to end the sermon quite there, but rather comment about what we humans suffer, the pain and horrors we inflict upon each other by refusing to embrace the truth that I just named. How many of our conflicts, our disruptions, our dislocations are due to trying to preserve a fleeting purity in the face of human diversity? Here I think of the damage that is done trying to maintain a certain kind of citizenship and a certain set of borders here in the United States by erecting physical boundaries on the metaphors we call the border between Texas and Mexico. And here also I think of the horrific conflict, the humanitarian disaster, the tit-for-tat war crimes unfolding in Gaza. How much of the conflict in Israel-Palestine can be attributed to a desire from powerful voices on both sides to remain pure, to have land and culture that is Jewish and not Palestinian, or Palestinian and not Jewish. Perhaps the path to peace lies through embracing the blending of cultures rather than rejecting them. To survive the borderlands, you must live sin fronteras, be a crossroads. My speculations on peace in the Middle East might be somewhat useless. It's hard to imagine right now that there will be a path towards peace or that Israel or Hamas will heed the United Nations call for a ceasefire. It seems likely that one of the worst ethnic cleansings in recent history is underway. But what Anzaldúa offers us, whether we are Chicana or not, is the opportunity to develop a new spirituality from the reality of our age. We all live on borders. Borders are permeable. We can refuse to recognize this and futilely try to maintain barriers and fences, or we can open ourselves to being crossroads, places where cultures meet and intermix and create something new. What shall we choose? Nothing happens in the real world unless it first happens in the images in our heads. Anzaldúa's words end my sermon and offer the congregation an opportunity to say Amen.
The purple ones, to number 24, Tengo sed de ti. Please repeat after me. Tengo sed de ti, o fuente del amor. Tengo sed de ti, tu amor es libertad. Please rise in body or spirit and join.
Please join me with the words to extinguishing our chalice that are printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
To survive the borderlands, you must live sin fronteras, be a crossroads. Hearing these words, may we open ourselves to the diversity in the world and the ways in which cultures and borders can intersect. Let us take these intersections for what they are, an invitation to bring more beauty into the world. Go in peace. Go in love. May our lives be a blessing. Amen. Thank you so much for watching our service today. We're glad you're part of our online community, where we welcome people who are diverse in faith, ethnicity, history, as well as gender identity and sexual orientation. There are many different ways you can get involved in our community. One you can do right now is by clicking like below or subscribing to our channel. If you're interested in joining our congregation, please email us at membership@firstuuhouston.org. Thanks so much for joining us.